privileged
This
access, that
conference will
means,
now be recorded.
okay. So shall I need to start again? Or I think I can go ahead. All right. So, so when I say privileged accounts, right? So privileged accounts and privileged access is something that is used for critical servers, that is used for critical credentials, that is used for critical or high level or highly secure infrastructure. Critical access, highly secure servers, and all these are part of privileged identities and privileged infrastructure in part of privileged access management portfolio, right? So let me provide you a quick walkthrough of the overall CyberArk program, and then we can go ahead with today's agenda. So in day one, we are, so is it paused, right? So just give me a second. You guys able to see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So the day one will be all about what are privileged access, what is CyberArk is doing to secure privileged accounts or privileged access, and also what exactly is CyberArk, why CyberArk is preferred over all the competitors in the market, why CyberArk is preferred as a CyberArk solution for privileged accounts, and it is why it is the most, I would say, most important or most sellable solution in the market, right? 70% PAM, privileged access management market, is captured by CyberArk. When I talk about North American market, Europe market, as well as some part of EMEA market as well. So 70% of the clients, the big shot banks and let's say insurance clients, all the retailers, all the retail big clients have preferred or go ahead with CyberArk especially for their privileged access management solution point of view. And then also on the high level, we are also covering today what exactly are the core components of PAM. You can see day one and day two are clearly scheduled for the PAM as well as the CyberArk overview. We will go in detail during the session, and then we have day three as the I would say will be covering the each component of CyberArk in a detailed installation manner, or let's say go in depth with CyberArk functionalities. What is exactly a CyberArk Vault? What exactly the CyberArk Vault will do? What are the things that we need to set up? What are the things that we need to do as a prerequisite to install the Vault? What are the things that we have to take care during the Vault installation and all those stuff? And then we have day four, where we are doing installation and integration and implementation of CyberArk GUI, which is the PVWA. It is a user interface for CyberArk as well as for end users as well as for CyberArk administrators. Then in day five, you can see we have installation of another CyberArk critical component, which is the policy manager. Basically, for securing privileged access and privileged accounts, password rotation as well as password management is one of the key features of the solution. So this component of CyberArk is responsible for that, which is the central policy manager. If we move down, then day six is basically the most important thing in CyberArk is how organization can integrate their existing Active Directory with the solution, with CyberArk solution itself. When I say the existing Active Directory integration with CyberArk solution, they can use their existing users of the Active Directory to integrate or to log into CyberArk transparently. So that is a critical or important step as well. Then day 7 and day 8 will be for one more important component of CyberArk, which is basically used for the session management. So I will be covering the functionalities of these components in detail. and then we are going ahead during our overall course how we set up these components and how each functionality can be used. And we will be doing more detailed discussion as a use case kind of implementation plus use case kind of discussions, right? Let's say if a client asks what exactly the PSM do, where in what use cases the PSM has been used, or what are the functions that you can use, or you can implement the use cases, you can be able to answer that. Then once the solution, the core component has been implemented, we will do the operations or the administration of CyberArk solution, because once the solution has been implemented, you have to do the organization, how the account should look like, what are the things, how user will access those accounts, what are the things that user can access within those accounts, whether it's password or session management or other stuff. And then we'll move to session 10, where we will, as I said, policies are one of the key areas of CyberArk PAM solution. So we have to also see how we can manage policies, how we can create policies, how we can create platforms. Platforms are also called as policies in CyberArk. Then on day 11, we will be performing the operations part, how to modify the account, delete account, change password, verification, reconcile. So we will be covering all these things in detail. And the two sessions, the last two sessions, or maybe the ones, it's going to be a one big session, is designed for the DR and the failover process. So I'm assuming that you might have already aware about DR, the disaster recovery configurations and other stuff. If not, I will be covering all those things in detail. Right? Any questions before I start with today's agenda, guys? Anyone? All right.
As of now, no.
Perfect. So let me start with today's agenda. Let me unshare the screen. Let me know if you're seeing my screen, and let me present this. Just give me one more minute. Perfect. Perfect. So this is day one of CyberArk training, and the agenda for training is we will be talking about what is privileged account management PAM overview, what are privileged accounts, CyberArk overview, and somewhat basic architecture and functions of CyberArk PAM. Right? So let me start with what are the privileged accounts. Just give me a second. Why it's giving me a hard time. All right. So as I said, the core functionality or the core aim of CyberArk PAM solution is to manage privileged accounts or privileged identities. When I say privileged accounts or privileged identity, it means the same. So when I say what are privileged accounts? Privileged accounts are those accounts which have elevated permissions, or you can say which access sensitive information, right? Which have access to sensitive information are considered as privileged account. I'll give you an example. For example, in your organization, right? Let's say you have access to your, when you join an organization, you have access to you log into your system, right? And you have access to your mail client or mail server, Outlook or something. You have access to your HR portals or any information portals. That is your normal access. That is your standard personal access. But let's say if you join a client, right, and client give you a server which especially has access to client's information, and for that you need a different account to log into that server, right? So that, because that information which is on a critical server or which is on an or on privileged server is something which is critical to your client. The client cannot let that information be modified, deleted, or be stolen or handled by someone, or can be breached by someone, right? That's why they put additional controls on that server so that only privileged users will have access to those privileged information. So that there is a difference between a standard account and a privileged account. So privileged account is something which has access to elevated permissions and access privileged or sensitive information, right? So basically, those critical server access, usually in the organizations, are not set up as individual access, right? For example, a root or an administrator account. So you can see in most of the organizations, right, an administrator account, which is the root, or let's say administrator is Windows, right? Windows administrator account is shared by 3 or 4 team members in an organization, right? So they will be sharing the same username and password between the team. So let's say there is a critical information on that client server, or you have to run a batch script or something which will be directly linked to your client's operations or something, right? So let's say if a user login, or there are like 4 members in the team, right? If one user login with that administrator account and perform some operations on that critical server, let's say if he messed up the task, he deleted some of the data from the client server, but since he know that he deleted that server, he's just logged out, and the next shift guy comes in and he have to log into the same username and password, right? So when he log in, he see that, okay, so this account is deleted, this information is being deleted or stolen or something. So as the team members are sharing the credentials, which is the administrator credentials, that information or that information which got deleted cannot be made accountable to anyone. For example, there will be no accountability at all who deleted what. That's why you have to make sure, or organizations have to make sure, that first of all, those critical accounts are secure. Second, you have to monitor each activity on those accounts and servers. Third, you have to manage or make people accountable if something got messed up on those servers. So basically, it's these root accounts or Windows accounts, root in Linux, and DB accounts and administrators these accounts are considered as critical accounts, and the information that they access are called critical or sensitive or privileged information. You have to secure these information, and that's how the core functionality of PAM works. Any questions regarding that, guys?
No, so far.
Great. I will quickly show you some examples of standard personal accounts or let's say non-privileged accounts. So basically the non-privileged accounts are those accounts which are standard personal accounts, right? For example, used by employees, contractors, partners, customers to log into the normal day-to-day operations, right? Elevated personal accounts or privileged accounts are something which have, as I explained, which have critical server access or let's say any sensitive information, whether it's an application or it's a database server or it's a Windows server or Linux server. All these considered as privileged or elevated personal accounts. Shared accounts are something which is basically your administrator accounts, which is being shared by multiple individuals in an organization, which don't have any accountability at all. Everyone is performing privileged operations using those shared accounts. And if something messed up, nobody is accountable for that. Nobody will see who did what because there is no individual accountability. These are shared accounts. And then we have application accounts. Application accounts are those accounts which you can say are considered as non-human accounts. For example, humans don't need to key in or provide credentials for that. For example, let's say there is an application, right, which is talking to, let's say there is a database, right? So there is a database which is talking to its front end. So consider the front end as one application and database as another application. When you key in when you write the code or when you write the query in database, right, you have to hard code the credentials so that it will talk to your front end every time when a user puts a query or whatever the operations that you do. So that in that operations, you don't have to provide passwords or username or password for each operation. It has to be key in once in the code, and then the application will talk itself and then perform other duties. They will authenticate by themselves. So that these application accounts are used for application to application communication, and the question comes, right, why these considered as privileged account. Let's say there is an application created in, let's say, in 2000 or 2001 year, right, in the year of 2000 and 2001. Somebody created a Java code or Java application linked with a front end. In the Java code of let's say 1000 pages, they provided or they key in the username and password at the time of connecting to the database, right? So let's say now it's 2021. After 20 years, first of all, you might not sure that where those credentials are being key in, because code is too long. You first of all, you have the password that you key in has not been rotated in 20 years or 5 years or 6 years, right? So if you not rotate those password and it's still linked with the critical application, that means your account is exposed to attackers. Your account, if an attacker attacks that application and somehow get access to that username and password, they can directly hack your database, which may link to a banking server, or let's say, or any critical store access, or any stuff. So securing the application accounts is also part of privileged account management. Any questions so far, guys? All right.
No,
Let me know if, all right, sure. So now expanding the definition of privileged users, right? What exactly the privileged users or privileged accounts consist of? As I said, the system administrators, whether it's an administrator's account on Windows, a root account on Unix, or anything, comes under privileged account. Application accounts which link to a critical server database, or anything which communicate from application to application communication, which use for application which use for communication of application to application accounts, or anything, is also considered privileged accounts. Your third party and service providers accounts are also considered privileged. I can give you an example for that. So that I think we discussed about system administrators and applications quite detailed, but I'll give you an example of third party and service providers as well. Let's say you have a solution in your organization, right? Any third party solution. Let's say you have any IGA tool, SailPoint is there, right? So your organization has been implemented a SailPoint solution for managing their IGA or IAM operations, right? So now if something happens to SailPoint, right, that SailPoint solution or SailPoint vendor, the organization will reach out to SailPoint vendor. They have to log in to the organization critical servers to manage or to troubleshoot the overall issue on those servers. But the risk is, let's say those third-party vendors, SailPoint guys, these are third-party vendors, they will accessing your privileged servers just for troubleshooting or something. If let's say if one of those guys got corrupted, they might access information from there as well. So securing the service providers and the third-party access in an organization, it can be anything, is also considered as privileged account or privileged account management. And then we have critical business users like your leaders, your business owners, business account leaders, which access critical data, for example, any leadership information or anything which related to business laws or something, right? that also considered as privileged account. And then nowadays, for the past 10 years or 7 years, you might also seen that your social networking accounts, sorry, your social networking accounts or your any accounts which might risk your overall portfolio. For example, I can give you an example, right? You guys have might seen that most of the celebrities are now getting if their Twitter accounts getting hacked, their Facebook accounts getting hacked, their Instagram accounts getting hacked, they have to come up with a post or with a note that their accounts has been hacked. Because let's say if somebody hacked the accounts of an organization, Facebook page or Twitter or LinkedIn page, right, and post something which is malicious, something which is not good for their business, you can imagine the loss of the wealth that they will be causing. For example, let's say Facebook, let's say if somebody hacked the LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter handle of Facebook and post something which is not relevant or which is not good for the organization, their shares will go down immediately in a day or something. That happened in like 3 weeks time, right? There was an outage, right? Just 3 or 4 weeks back in Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. 6 hours of outage causes 6 billion to Mark Zuckerberg. Who remembers that? Like 4 weeks back, there was an outage.
Yeah, there was.
There was, right? Like you can understand from like 6 hours of outage cost 6 billion to Mark Zuckerberg. So now you can understand. Let's say if any of these accounts or any of these information got hacked and come to the public, like come to the public figure, or let's say exposed to the media or something, then the organization are losing tons of money because of the reputation that they have built. Who will invest in a bank who is not secured enough to secure their users' credentials or users' accounts or users' information? Nobody will invest in that bank. The investors will definitely take their money out, take their investments out, and the bank will go bankrupt in a year or so, right? So right now, that's why CyberArk privileged access management is one of the critical portfolios in an organization. They have huge budgets in the starting of the year when the budgets got assigned to individual departments, right? So cybersecurity and privileged access management is something which is very critical for the organizations right now. And for the governments as well. You might have heard that in UAE or in Australia or most of the North American governments has put regulations that all the banks or insurance sectors or all those clients should have a privileged access management solution within their organization to secure the privileged access. Now these things slowly are coming up from the governments as well to put regulations to secure these privileged information, privileged accounts and those stuff. So that's why securing all these accounts or all these, I would say, application of privilege information is very critical for individuals, organizations, plus all the stakeholders. It will be a responsibility of all the stakeholders, CISO and everyone, to make sure that they will not play with the reputation of any organization. Right? Any questions till now, guys?
No.
Perfect. Let me go forward to the next slide. As I said, I think I've discussed most of the things in detail. Let's say, let's talk about the risks, right? What are the risks if let's say if something happened to these privileged accounts? Because as I said, these privileged accounts are critical. They access sensitive information. They have pretty high risk information stored in those servers or in accounts, right? So what are the things that organization can see? So first of all, these are the most powerful accounts in the organization. Yeah. So because let's say if anything happens to these accounts which leads to expose of the critical information, definitely make a business loss, right? So definitely it should be the most powerful accounts in the organization. Second, I think already discussed, access sensitive information, as I said. And the third important point is quite critical. let me talk about an administrator account on Windows or a root account on Linux, right? So have you ever seen that your administrator account has been changed regularly for the past 3 months or 6 months or 4 months? No. You might get notification to change your personal account. Let's say your personal account is getting expired in like 3 months or 4 months down the line. You get a notification, okay, please change your personal account. But have you get a notification that, okay, this administrator account is getting expired soon in 3 months or something? No, hardly. I would say hardly organizations are changing the credentials for these, because let's say if they change the credentials, right, it will be an operational task to share the passwords with those chunk of users so that they can perform normal day-to-day operations. And as I said, these are shared accounts. The account credentials are known to many individuals because that's their day-to-day operation, right? As I said, there is no individual user accountability because you have to perform operations as well. You can't do much. Administrator access is required for those operations. You have to share the passwords with shift 1, shift 2, shift 3 guys, right? 24/7, right? Let's say if there is a client has given an operations, or maybe has provided their outsourcing services to a third party vendor. Let's say we have big IT companies, right? Then the client also have to share those credentials to the third party vendor or to the third party services organization as well. Maybe it's Wipro, TCS, or anyone. I would say any outsourcing or any big IT company who are handling their IT operations. The client have to share so that they can perform normal day-to-day operations, right? So I think most of you guys have seen those, or or maybe you guys are relating the overall problem. Why I'm discussing the problem, then we will see what CyberArk solution is, how CyberArk is solving the use cases of the overall IT or overall information technology or cybersecurity, I would say, portfolio, right? Any questions till now, guys?
No.
Anyone can delete. Anyone can delete. All these scenarios are relatable, right? As per the organization point of view, like you can delete the administrator account use case, root account use case, database account use case. You are able to relate, right? Or you want me to go ahead more in detail?
I think we can relate. I mean, at least me.
Perfect. All right, I think it's going good. Perfect. Let me know if you have anything. All right, so I will quickly, because I'm covering these challenges during our conversation, right? But I have a slide as well. So as I said, like, let's say any identity theft of these privileged accounts, any data leakage, any system abuse, accidentally or intentionally, right? Accidentally also, let's say if you noted down a password of your administrator user in a sticky notes place on your desktop or somewhere in an organization, accidentally, right? Let's say if a coworker going around and saw the username and password, and he has some grudge on you, right, for the past 3 months or something, or let's say last week, he saw the password, he deleted some files, it will be on your name. So that's an accidental theft or something, right? What all those let's say if something data leakage or identity theft or any system abuse happens accidentally or intentionally to those privileged account or privileged access, what it can lead to? As I said, financial losses. You can see the example of Mark Zuckerberg. Even though that is not a cybersecurity breach, it's a infrastructure breach. But have you heard about I would say, I think in 1.5 years back, there is an OT organization, operational technology, a big OT organization, which is linked to I would say a cold link firm in London. What happens is some attackers from Russia have breached their central domain controller, which is controlling their privileged IDs and administrator account. They get access to all their internal users, privileged accounts, plus normal shared accounts and all those stuff. Now, once they access those, they breach their domain controller. Once they got information, once they got access to the domain controller, they hacked all that information. And after that, they did a ransom to that organization. It's a huge, I will not take a name, but yeah, it's a huge organization. And let's say if that things comes to the media, that will be a huge business or financial loss to the organization, right? So they did a ransom, and company has paid that ransom in the backdoor, or in something which is in the cryptocurrency in the backdoor, and to those attackers, so that the information will not come to the media, that will have financial or business losses or whatnot to that client. It has been done. Brand damage, definitely. If something, let's say if something happens to a company which is storing users credit card information, especially let's say a shopping site, right, which is storing your credentials, like we all save our cards on all those shopping sites for quicker access, right, most of the times, Best Buy, whatnot. So let's say if something happens, some information or users information got breached, and attackers got those information, and it got leaked to the media, your next day Best Buy shares will went down from something to 10% or 20% down, and then over the period, if the situation retaliate, then it might go to bankruptcy as well. Brand damage, business continuity damage, very good information, because business continuity, let's say if something happens to infrastructure which is holding your critical information. Infrastructure, when I say, let's say your server which is hosting your website, any bank, or let's say take an example of Best Buy itself. If attackers access privileged information, they can take the infrastructure down as well. Regulatory penalties, yes, government will definitely penalize you, because you exposed thousands of users who are your trusted users, exposed their credit card information, their phone numbers, their individual information, and there are some regularities in North America, Europe, as well as in Middle East, as well as in Asia as well, where the government have some regulations that the information of privileged users have to be secured by any way. And then let's say if something got breached, your information, anything, your infrastructure goes down, if then anything happens to that organization, or let's say a big brand, customer will definitely not go back to those organizations or the big brand side. All these things are linked with data leakage, identity theft, or anything. So suppose a scenario, that's why organizations, these big organizations, have so much budget. In $1 million they have budget every year to secure or to mature their overall privileged account management portfolio, or overall their space. That's why they spend so much. We should wonder why they are spending so much money to secure these accounts, right? We have to ask this question to ourselves. Why there is a $1 million project coming to let's say to KPMG, a big organization is giving that project, $1 billion project. Why? Because they have to be ready for future. If something happened to their information, if that got leaked, that might do a big loss for them, whether it's financial loss, brand damage, BCP, which is penalties, customer loss, anything. So they have to be prepared in advance for all those stuff. Right? Any questions till now, guys?
No.
All right. I think I already covered these things, so it's a repeatable slide just for the info. As I said, these are the most powerful accounts. Access sensitive information rarely change. Yeah. All right. So you can ask this question, right? You have normal IAM tools, right? In the organization, you have SailPoint, CAIM, other stuff. IBM has also one. Azure guys, AWS has also their IAM tool. You can say why CyberArk or why PAM? What is the difference between IAM and PAM? Right? You can ask these questions. Right? That question comes to your mind as well. Why normal IAM tools? Why a company has to buy one more solution license, that to be in millions or that to be in thousands, right? $1,000 to manage or secure privileged account itself. Why your existing IAM solution cannot handle that? So I will tell you the difference. Your IAM or your governance or IGA tools, right? These tools are basically the core use case or the core functionality of these tools in the current capacity or in the current business time are limited to manage, store, or access or provide governance to the standard or let's say standard personal accounts, your accounts which are linked to your organization access. Sorry, I had a question. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Tell me.
Sorry, my connection.
Amit?
I lost my internet connectivity. So, can you just repeat? As you started the slide, right? My internet connectivity got lost.
Okay, no problem, Amit. Okay, no problem. So, Amit, I was telling why the organizations have to spend separately on PAM or privileged access management tools, right? They already have IAM tools. Why IAM tools, maybe your SailPoint or someone or something, can't manage the privileged access? Why the question should be like, why your IAM tools should not be able to manage the privileged access? Why you have to buy additional licenses to manage those or to integrate or deploy one more solution, right? That's the question. So there is a clear difference in IAM and PAM use cases. That's why organizations have to buy or have to implement or deploy two different solutions for IAM management as well as privileged access management solution. I'll tell you, I was giving a use case. So your normal IAM tools, right? Whether it's IGA, so SailPoint IGA or any CAIM, those are managing the workflow of the end users or the life cycle of the users, where it will using their standard personal accounts. Let's say you join an organization. When you join an organization, there is an IGA tool integrated in the organization which will create your ID, which will create your email, which will provide you basic access, right? Whether it's your mail access, your HR portal, your timesheet portal, everything got automated via IAM tool, SailPoint or something. So when you join that organization, you get automatically all those roles. Your ID will be created by, let's say, first name, last name, dot last name. Your email got created, everything. How is that created? That is created through an IAM tool. All the users or all the candidates who are joining that organization will be automatically getting all those access, which are the basic, or I would say the prerequisites for any users who's joining that organization. That life cycle is handled by the IAM tools itself. But let's say there are 5 guys who join an organization. Let's say there is a Java guy, there is a storage guy, there is a .NET guy, there is a DevOps guy, and there is a cybersecurity guy. Your prerequisite or your initial access might be same, right? Let's say you all have email access, you all have your Outlook or Gmail access, you all have your HR access, HR portal access, timesheet level access, but your privileged access, which leads your day-to-day operations. DevOps guy needs access to critical servers for that client. He needs to perform operations, right? That information or that account or those accounts will not be handled by your normal IGA tools. That's where your PAM tools comes in, or your CyberArk solution comes in, which will manage or access your privileged accounts or privileged, which should not be same for all the candidates which joined with you. It has to be role based, right? I'll tell you now, coming to the difference, right? So first of all, the minimum impact of IAM tools is you do not know for all, you don't know where your privileged account sits in your organization, right? You don't know which is your privileged account. How do you identify which is my privileged account? How do you identify that this account or this server is considered as privileged information? So that your IAM tools or IEG tools will not be able to identify. Second, you have no record. For example, let's say if a user uses let's say if a user uses administrator user credentials, right? What is the proof that that account or that credential is being used by that user, because it's being shared with multiple users, right? There is no proof, there is no account, right? There is no way that the monitoring of those accounts can be done. For example, let's say if I'm logging to a critical server via a user administrator or via a root account in Linux, then there is no way that I'll be able to manage or able to record those sessions or make auditing of those sessions. What are the things that a user performing? IGA tools will not be able to provide that functionality. That's a limitation as of in the current capacity. Maybe in the future they might be able to come up a centralized tool which will be, and it's in process, right? There is no reliability list that you can restrict access to those privileged servers. Let's say a user one is using administrator user, right? Administrator user and credentials. So let's say if I have to give a user one that he can only access that critical server between 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. or let's say 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So if you have to restrict the access of that user in the critical server, you will not be able to do that. You have to use a PAM tool to restrict those access. There are other ways as well, but that includes different solutions. There is no centralized solutions in place which will manage all this so that you can keep a tab of all the privileged access being accessed, stored, and monitored. Any questions till now, guys?
No.
All right. Just give me a second. Right. So now, I think we discussed about the problems, right? All the problems related to privileged accounts and all those stuff. Now, you might say, okay, so what about the problems, right? Now, what about the solution, right? So, as you know, CyberArk solutions is a PAM, privileged access management, or privileged accounts solution, or privileged account security, whatever you want to name it, is a PAM or PaaS solution. It got founded in 1999 by Udi Makori. He and his team has founded, or it's got laid out in 1999. It's an Israel-based organization, but now it has its headquarters in US, and it's been almost 22 years, and it's one of the oldest PAM tools in the market, and also sharing the big chunk of market, especially for PAM clients. So if you see all the big banks, when I say 70% market, that includes all the big organizations, because the trust that CyberArk has in market is something that they build over time for the past 22 years, right? All right, so you might see a big picture here, right? So this is the overall portfolio or overall components, or overall, I would say, the whole CyberArk workspace, right? What exactly CyberArk do? What exactly CyberArk PAM do? As you can see, the first thing that is here, right? The first thing, enterprise password vault. What exactly is enterprise password vault? So enterprise password vault here is CyberArk's central database, right? It is the heart of the CyberArk solution. EPV is something which stores everything which is related to CyberArk, whether it's username, password, all the CyberArk policies, all the configurations, everything is stored inside this vault. As the name suggests, it's a vault, right? It has to be secured. So CyberArk has created or has come up with a vault which is so secure that even CyberArk doesn't have access to the vault after it's implemented in any of the organizations or even the administrators. It's basically an appliance which has 7 layers of security inside it based on encryption, firewalls, or whatnot. It has 7 layers of security inside it, and also hardened as well, right? So that once the information goes inside the vault, it can only be accessed by privileged users, or it can only be accessed by CyberArk's other component over a secured channel. So that's the first and the most important component of CyberArk, which is the vault. Moving ahead, the second most important component of CyberArk is your web access portal, right? You can see in the top here. This is the web access portal or the PAM portal. It's called as Privileged Vault Web Access, right? So this portal, what it do is, let's say if you store any information inside CyberArk, right? You have to access that information at some point of time. Users have to log in, administrators have to perform operations. How you do that? You have to do that with a web portal. So CyberArk has come up with a web portal kind of, I would say, a web page where the users and the administrators will log in and provide and perform their day-to-day operations, as well as fetching the passwords or other stuff, right? So we will be covering these individual components in our upcoming sessions and installing it, plus relating or connecting the dots, right, with the use cases, how CyberArk whole atmosphere, a whole portfolio will be securing the access, privileged access together, right? So this is the second most component of CyberArk. Now, coming back to your master policy, as I said, the policy is one of the most important features of CyberArk solution. When I say policy, is something related to, let's say, a policy to rotate or to change password of any account, let's say after 30 days, 60 days, as per your requirement or as per client's requirement, right? So this policy or master policy is something that you have to set up in CyberArk initially, and the rest of the operations it will take care by itself. I have to give you an example. So when I say master policy, right, this is something which is a master policy which applied to all the accounts in CyberArk. You created a policy in CyberArk that all the privileged accounts that are inside CyberArk or inside or onboarded to CyberArk should always be rotated by CyberArk automatically itself after 30 days. So this policy or this master policy or this component of CyberArk will be responsible, will make sure that each account inside CyberArk will automatically get rotated after 30 days. Okay, sorry. Right. Now, any questions till now, guys? We have covered 3 components of CyberArk. The first one is your enterprise password vault. The second one is your web access, and the third one is your master policy. Any questions till now?
No.
All right. Let me go ahead and cover the fourth and important component of CyberArk, which is your privileged session manager, which we call it as PSM as well, like privileged session manager. So PSM is also one of the most important component of CyberArk, which is basically giving you a transparent functionality to connect to your target When I say target, it can be a Windows server, it can be a Linux server, it can be a database application, it can be a web portal, anything. It will allow you to connect transparently or as a jump box to your target servers without providing or without key in any credentials at all. And you might be wondering, oh, wow, how this can be happened? Because credentials are everything, right? You have to, if you have to access anything, you have to key in the credentials. But that's how CyberArk will take care. If you onboard an account in CyberArk, onboard a server in CyberArk, CyberArk will automatically takes care of the username and password part. But it will not show you or expose you the username and password, but it will also allow you to access that server transparently once you log into CyberArk. This is one of the key features along with password rotation in CyberArk, PSN. And then we have your application identity manager. As I said before, as we discussed before, application accounts are also considered as privileged accounts. So this module or this component of CyberArk is used to manage those application accounts. And the fifth one is your on-demand privilege manager, which is basically, as I said, restrict the access. For example, even though let's say a user has access to administrator or a root account and he's sharing the password, but we can limit what are the operations, what are the commands he can run, or what are the operations he can perform with that access as well. Let's take an example. In a root, right? Let's say if a user has root access as well, but you limit that root access that he will only be able to perform the insert operation or any operation which can move or copy the command, but he will not be able to perform any delete task which will delete any information from that server itself. So that component will be covered with this functionality of CyberArk on-demand privilege manager. Now moving ahead, I think I already provided more details about this one. So you can see there are 5 major components of CyberArk PAM solution. As you can see, I have listed down all these 5, and I think we are in the upcoming sessions we will be installing and discussing about the use cases of all these 5 components. The first one is, as I said, EPV, which is your most important database, I would say, or vault storage of the solution, which is highly secured. Then you have a PrivateArk client, which is basically a Windows thick client. You have to install that to access the vault data. Then you have your CPM, which is your policy manager, central policy manager, which, as I said, which is used to manage the policies plus rotate the passwords. The fourth is your web access, PWA, and the fifth one is your PSN, as I said. Any questions till now, team?
No.
I think we have discussed the problem, and now we have discussed the solution as well, right? I think I think everyone is able to relate the problem with the solution.
Right.
Great. All right, just give me a second. Right. So I'm covering the day 2 as well because we still have time. So now we discussed, like previously we discussed about the high level stuff of these core components, right? Now let's discuss more about each component and see and try to understand each component individually. So day 2 training, at the end of day 2 training, what you will be able to understand or you will be able to speak is regarding CyberArk core components. The first one is your enterprise password vault, as I said, PVWA, CPM, and PSM. So we will be covering each component in detail in day 2. All right, so as I said before, it's the heartbeat of the solution, enterprise password vault. It is a hardened and secure digital vault used to store privileged account information. It's a, you can see, it's a highly secure server, which is basically a 7-layer security, which is basically your hierarchically encrypted. It's tampered proof auditability, comprehensive monitoring, segregation of duties, firewalls, authentication, session encryption. These are the 7 layers on which this vault has been secured. Plus, as this is stored everything, this has to be restricted only for privileged users access, right? When I say hierarchically encrypted, this vault is handled AEH SSH 56 encryption, right? So this is something that CyberArk has kept it high level to themselves, that they are following a huge encryption model, which is basically encrypting everything which is stored inside your vault. Let's suppose if a data, even let's say if by any chance, if an attacker got access to vault itself by any chance and steals the data from the vault itself, which is a highly critical data, right? Even though if he steals that, he will not be able to access that because of the encryption part, because CyberArk has segregated the encryption as well as with other security controls inside the vault, that it makes sure that you have to use the combination of 2 or 3 things to access that information. That's how secured this vault is. Any questions till now before I move to the next component?
No, no.
Perfect. So you might have noticed that there are only 4 core components, right? I have not mentioned this private client. So basically, this is not a component of CyberArk. It is, I would say, a console, right? Which is used to access the information of which is inside Vault. Vault is a server, but you need some kind of a web UI or a client, a Windows client or a thick client, something to access that information. So this is that thick client, which is called private client. This is a Windows application. It is only used by administrators. End users will not be able to access private client, and usually it installs on those machines from where you want to access the vault data, which is quite rare, right? You don't want to access vault data, your highly secure data, on most of the machines. Either you install it on the vault server itself, or you can give access to any other secure server that from that server you can access vault data. So as it says, it can be installed on any number of remote computers. It's a thick client to access or to manage vault data. Plus, it can be accessed through combination of LAN, WAN, or the internet. Let's say if you have to access through internet, you can do that as well. You can do that with LAN or WAN as well. And then in the upcoming sessions, while we do the installation of this component, we will be showing you what exactly I mean. And in that session, you will be able to connect the dots with the functionality and with the component that we are talking about. All right. So this is the web UI, as I discussed. the web interface, which is your very important functionality. This is how it looks like in the current capacity. You can see a sign-in page, a CyberArk logo. An end user will log in on this one, and also an administrator will log in using this one. So basically, this UI, as I said, is used for used by administrator to perform administration tasks, and also used by end users to access to the privileged information or privileged servers, right? Basically, to get the credentials or to log into the server individually. So this is how your PVWA looks like. Any questions till now?
No.
You can see the inside. This is again a different snapshot of PVWA. So you can see a user on the right hand side, bottom, right? We have this Zotam user have access to these accounts. You can see the IPs here as well, right, in the middle. So these are the server IPs, and these are the username that the user have access. Accounts or usernames, or accounts, I would say, the accounts which this guy is having access. This is how the inside or end user console will look like for a user. A different screenshot just for more reference, right? And then we have policy manager or CPM, something, right? As I said, CPM is a core function or core component of CyberArk, which is responsible for the password rotation, and it has to make sure how often the password has to be rotated. How to set the password complexity, very important thing. CPM will also set the password complexity as well. Let's say if you want that all the passwords in your organization should have at least 6 special characters, you can set that in CPM policy. You have to CPM also change the password of all the accounts. Let's say there is a use case in the organization that Windows accounts are onboarded in CyberArk, Linux accounts are onboarded in CyberArk, application database accounts are onboarded in CyberArk, web application accounts are onboarded in CyberArk. It has the capability to rotate all the passwords by itself without any human intervention. And we are covering that in detail once we start doing the installation, how it does that. You might be wondering, okay, how this component will be able to rotate the password of all different protocols, right? For example, RDP in Windows, SSH in Linux, database has their SQL protocols, web application has HTTPS and other stuff. How this single component will be able to communicate to those servers and then log in as a user and rotate the password of privileged accounts. It's a pretty big breakthrough in CyberArk solution perspective, and then also this solution is responsible for managing all these things which is related to password change, password management, policy or policy management, right? And you might be wondering how we can set the policies of CPM. The CPM policies can be set through PVWA. You have to log in as an administrator, and then you will be able to set all these policies via PVWA web page. So PVWA is something which is, as I said, which is something which is accessed by end users and administrators. If an administrator logs in, he will have access to manage all the policies, all the administration tasks, and everything via PVWA of CPM. And this is something which I would like that we should be covering more detail during our individual components section, right? Because this is something I don't want to take it as a now, because this is something which relates to the overall workflow, and the workflow should only be discussed once we start doing the installation of the component. So I will discuss this you in slide in session 3 or 4 or fourth session, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Right. let's talk few minutes about PSM. This is the last core component of CyberArk, which is quite important as well, right? So your PSM, Privileged Session Manager, right, or Privileged Session Management, basically does three things. It's a jump server between you and the privileged server that you have to access. It sits between that part, you and the privileged server access. So what it will do, it will do three things: isolate, control, and monitor. So for example, let's suppose a normal workflow. If I have to access a privileged server, I have to have the credentials of that privileged server. I will log in directly. I will do a RDP of to access that privileged Windows server, provide my administrator username and password, and access that server and perform my privileged operations or anything operation which might do. I have to run a script or anything, launch application, anything, right? That's the normal workflow, which has its own pros and cons. Now, once CyberArk solution has been implemented in an organization, we have to break the chain of that workflow. So now, when I say isolate, CyberArk isolates the session, or PSM isolates the session. The workflow after CyberArk implementation will look like: a user will have to log in to CyberArk via PWA GUI of CyberArk. Then it will search for that server in the account section, and it will give you an option to connect directly. So when you connect directly, you are using PSM, but directly connecting to your privileged server itself without providing any username and password. That way, CyberArk PSM isolates the session of target servers accessing privileged or sensitive information from desktop. Any questions before I move to the control part, guys? All right.
So Anush, one quick question. So under control, there is workflow. Can you just explain how the workflows basically help in the control management?
Sorry, which control? I have not covered the control yet. I only talk about isolate. Hello, is this Amit? Hello? Sorry, I didn't get your name. Who asked the question? Guys, am I audible?
You're audible. I think it was asked by Amit itself. Maybe you have some.
Oh, maybe he has some internet issues.
Okay.
I can see. All right. So isolate is something that it acts as a jump server between you and your target access, and it will take over the session and will provide you a scenario where you don't have to provide the username and password. Second is something it says that the control of the overall session. When a user log into a privileged server via PSM, now PSM will control that session. PSM will control that session, and it will take control of all the privileged activities that is happening on that server, right? If a user is doing any critical activity or any activity which you don't have to perform, then the administrator has the option to terminate that user session as well. So that's how PSM provide the functionality to administrators that if they want to terminate that session can be terminated. If he sees some malicious or unwanted activities which is performed by any user, he can do that as well. And the third option is monitor. All the sessions which are connected through PSM will be recorded inside CyberArk. So let's say you have to run a script, right, for a client. You log into that critical server, you run a bad job. You use CyberArk to run that or everything, access the server and use a bad job and everything, right? All those things which you do on a server by login to PSM, all those things will be recorded and stored inside the vault. Let's say if an administrator wants to check what are the things that you have done, next day he come and he can see all the sessions that you have accessed, or all the things that you have done on that server, and the next day or on the same day as well. That's how PSM monitors or record the overall session or overall user activity inside the solution. So these are three things that usually PSM will do, and we will be covering all these things, all these PSM or all these functionalities or components of CyberArk in our next sessions, and we'll be performing or installing the solution in the environment. Plus we will be doing use cases, day-to-day operations, connecting the use cases with the actual discussion that we are having and all those stuff. So that is it from my side today. Any questions that you have in mind, guys, before we wrap up today?
I think I'm good, but probably you will cover this in future. But you said like actually the CyberArk will rotate the passwords using the policy manager. I mean, that's one that is the one actually which decides actually when to rotate the password, change the password. But let's say if the passwords are used in any of the application or in the code, is the password automatically changed there as well, or like?
No. So you're saying that let's say an administrator user, right? An administrator user or administrator account is being used inside a code.
No, a service account. Let's think about a service account, not administrator account.
Right. So so service account is an application account. So service account is handled by CyberArk EAAS Module, Application Access Manager, right? So a service, first of all, if it's a service account, usually we will advise the organizations that service account should not be handled by humans at all. It's a non-human account. It's a service account, right?
Right.
So service account, if it's used at multiple, I would say multiple applications or multiple operations, then CyberArk has the capability to change the passwords at all those locations. But sometimes organizations don't know where all that account is being used, or it might break the chain, right?
Okay.
So I will give you a heads up. It's a consulting question. I will give you a heads up. So basically, how we approach is we ask organization to create a duplicate account with the same permissions and everything. And if you want to replace, if you create a duplicate account, let's say at 3 places you know that you are using that account, right? But that's all you don't know. So at 3 places we will ask you, or as a consultant we will advise you to use the duplicate account, so that CyberArk knows that he's changing the password of the duplicate account in 3 places. And rest all, if you don't know, you're not securing that password. You got what I'm saying?
No, I didn't get. What do you mean by duplicate account here?
No. So let's say you have a service account. You know, at 2 places you are using that account.
Okay.
Right. So CyberArk will be able to rotate the password of that service account with CyberArk Application Access Manager module on those 2 places.
Okay.
So that's your answer. But I'm giving you a expand scenario that most of the organizations don't know where exactly or where all the places you using your service account. You know 2 places, but there might be more as well, right?
Exactly. No one knows if they forget or whatever.
Yes. No one knows. But let's say if CyberArk rotates the password, you know, at 2 places, then it might break some chain of other accounts as well, right? You cannot take that risk. So the workaround is create a duplicate account at AD level or service account level, right?
Okay.
And replace that account on the places where you know that the service account is used.
Okay.
I think when we will cover the AM part, right, we will be discussing all these things in detail. But for your answer is yes, CyberArk will be able to rotate at all the places.
Okay, got it. So CyberArk is able to access the applications and change whatever where the service account is used technically.
Absolutely. That's where your CyberArk AAM comes in. It's, as I said, application accounts is one of the key use cases for CyberArk, right?
Got it. Understood.
It has the, yeah.
Thanks, man.
Any questions, guys?
I have a quick question. How do we access Mega Cloud? I set up an account yesterday. So.
Sorry, I am having hard time in hearing you. Sorry, can you please repeat one more time?
Access Mega Cloud for videos.
Omega Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the videos, right? I will get back to you on that one because I have to check with Rakesh. He will be sharing some details on the group itself. All right.
All right.
All right. If we don't have much questions, I think we can wrap up. And yeah, let me know if you have anything or any feedback if you're good. I think today's session. Like, what do you have any feedback for today's sessions?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, it was a
All
good
right.
session. You know, we probably have to go through all of it like 1 or 2 times to grasp all of it, but it was a good session in general. Thank you.
Perfect. Because yeah, and don't worry, guys. I know it's our first technical class for this training, but we will be covering all the use cases, understanding of those use cases, everything in detail during our installation and upcoming sessions.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys. Yeah, with that, I would say happy learning, and please let me know if you have anything for me. And thank you. Have a good one, guys.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.